There is something in between the trees. Limbs, horns, a body, a figure. Or is it just more forest? Maybe you're fooled by the limits of your visual perception. You'll never know until it moves. This is one of the many reasons why the woods are my favorite horror setting. And no other movie in recent memory did it as well as The Ritual. A group of men unintentionally setting foot into an ancient forest still ruled by the old gods, untouched by monotheism, technology, and civilization. A place where the oldest type of relationship still determines everything, the relationship between the prey and the predator. So much has been said about the film, because it's exceptional. It's a shame that there aren't more movies like it. No One Gets Out Alive from 2021 changes the Norse gods for Aztec gods, and takes place in the same universe. But it doesn't come anywhere near close to the quality of the horror poster child. Maybe it's because I'm sick of haunted houses, even if the haunting is a result of a Mesoamerican cum jar. There is, however, more ritual, because the movie is based on a book by Adam Nevill. And not only that the book has significantly more content, its underlying themes are very different as well. The horror is slower and more dreamy. But obviously not everyone likes to read, and that's why I'm here. To give you a summary and talk about my personal takes on The Ritual, because the book is similar but very different in key aspects. This is apparent as soon as the first page. A group of 4 friends stumbles upon a corpse of an animal in a forest. It was impaled on branches of trees, far above human reach. Its insides revealed to the world, displayed by something proud of its work. Unlike in the movie, the friend group here is 4 people, and always has been. This is their reunion trip. They met each other in college, but as time went on, they grew apart. The dynamic within the friend group is the most important theme of the first part of the book. You have Luke, the main protagonist, who is the only one that doesn't have a wife or a career. He constantly switches his jobs and relationships. To people around him, it seems like he never grew up. This frustrates Luke deeply. Why can't other people accept his life choices? Why should he get married, have kids, and then off his job like most other men his age? Dom and Phil were Luke's good friends in college, but that is no longer the case. They almost never talk to Luke. It's almost as if they lived in a different universe. As far as he knows, both Dom and Phil are rich and have functional families, but he never even gets invited for a visit. He's the only one who still lives in an apartment in London. The others have houses in their respective hometowns. Conversation with the two is impossible for Luke, because any topic he tries to talk about turns into an eye roll or a joke. What he says is always funny and silly. They see him as someone stuck in his early 20s. The disgust goes both ways. He sees how Dom and Phil fell victim to a stale life. Both of them are fat and out of shape. I can't help myself but share some of the beautiful sentences English literature is known for. Stretching his blue work shirt taut, Phil's hairy white stomach had been visible, and his arse looked bulbous enough to suggest the feminine. The last of our characters, Hutch, is the glue that keeps them together. He is the only one who keeps in frequent contact with Luke. He still has an active lifestyle, he's a scuba diver and a mountain biker. But at the same time, he is happily married. He is the type of person with a lot of emotional intelligence and tries to make Luke not feel left out. The 4 Englishmen agreed that their reunion trip will take the form of a hike through northern Sweden. However, it's apparent that only Hutch and Luke are physically fit enough to do something like this. Even worse, Phil has a problem with blisters on his feet and Dom twisted his knee. The weather is terrible as well, it rains constantly. Luke is angry at Dom and Phil for not preparing for the trip. He looked forward to this for a whole year and scrambled together the little money he had for the gear. But he keeps his anger to himself, a cigarette always in his mouth to calm him down. It once again falls on Hutch to make a compromise and keep the friend group together. He decides on a shortcut through the woods. It's a large, virgin forest, but at its narrowest point, they should get to its other side by the evening. And so they go. The forest is pure and untouched. The trail that led them in slowly disappeared. After a while, they are welcomed into the woods by the above-mentioned dead animal. Here the first culture shock kicked for me. Since they are millennials, they start thinking about what sort of an animal would be capable of such strength. A zoomer would immediately take a photo and send it into the group chat. Anyway, after a slow crawl through the overgrown vegetation, they find a trail. It doesn't lead in the right direction, but at this point it's their best chance. And as evening sets in, they find a house. It's an abandoned shack, old but still standing. It's not the colorful Swedish stereotype. This one is dark and unwelcoming. Luke doesn't have a good feeling about it. He would rather continue and get out of the forest that day. But Phil and Dom are too tired to continue. He gets reminded that he doesn't have any injury, as if it was his fault for being fit. They break into the house, but Luke stays outside a bit longer to smoke. He can't help himself but to overanalyze the situation. It's that way he can't even hold a proper conversation with them, while it seems like the three can talk for hours among themselves. Almost as if they have been hanging out without him every weekend. It's those subtle things, like how Hutch shares a tent with Dom, almost as if they were as close as all of them were back in college. But the trip had been so wretched because he recognized so little of the others now, which made him wonder if he had ever really known them at all. 15 years was a long time, but part of him had still clung to the notion that they were his best friends. But he was truly on his own out here. They had nothing in common anymore. His thoughts are interrupted by a sound of wood being splintered behind him. He faces the forest but can't see anything. An echo passes away, as if something large was making its way away from the house, breaking the trees and vegetation on its way. He briefly imagined a terrific rage and strength, a terrible intent out there. Imagined it until he almost accepted it. Once he enters the house, he notices that the walls are decorated with horns, antlers, and crucifixes. No one is willing to hear him out about the strange noises he heard, since there is a thunderstorm raging outside. And while he is sure that what he heard wasn't a thunder, he is more than happy to forget about it. They get back to talking and Luke is suddenly happy again. We'll see these mood swings a lot. That's how a lot of long-lasting friendships tend to be. In one moment you're questioning why are you even hanging out in the first place, and in the next moment you're back to being best friends. There is an attic and Phil decides to check what's up there. Just a couple seconds later he is rushing back down the stairs, almost falling. He freezes, unable to cope with what he saw. There was something in the dark, staring at him. They aren't able to get anything more out of him. Hutch assumes that it might be an animal, so he and Luke go up the stairs to investigate. The scene is vividly written. We get to see it through Luke's perspective. The emotions on Hutch's face as he takes the last steps and sees that there really is something up there. Just barely visible. Surrounded by darkness, there is an upright figure staring at the two from the back of the attic. They shine their lights onto it, revealing it sitting in a coffin of sorts. It's a goat, stuffed and in a kneeling position. Its lips have been turned back to reveal the teeth. Its arms are turned upwards, as if it was commanding the people before it to worship it. But what worries them the most are the hands. They are human. Someone mummified them and sewed them onto the goat. Hutch is sure of what he found. It's Baphomet, the goat of Mendes. As disturbing as it is, it poses no real danger. It's just another dead animal. So the four of them get to drinking a bottle of Jack they brought with them. They get to bantering, trying to forget about the thing in the attic and the forest. But Luke can't help himself. He needs to share his thoughts with the others. Apparently, we're all programmed at a primal level in the reptilian brain to fear the woods, but it's more than that. I felt since we entered this forest that this fear isn't unjustified. I had this freaky idea earlier when we were upstairs. Luke knew the idea would be unwelcome to the ears of anyone still awake, but could not stop himself thinking out loud. If that thing upstairs was a representation of the thing that threw the carcass into the tree. Everyone has nightmares that night. Luke dreams about being impaled on tree branches, like that animal they've seen. Something large, tall and lanky, approaching him from the forest, accompanied by jackal-like sounds. When he wakes up, it takes him a while to remember that he is a person, not cattle to be mutilated. Once he comes to his senses, he hears sounds coming from the attic. Up there he finds Hutch, praying to the goat. Too afraid to move and too afraid to look up. After Luke wakes him up, Dom is found outside, half asleep, half awake, staring into the trees. "It's going to put us there in the trees," he mumbles. They find Phil in an even worse state, tucked away in the corner of a small storage room, sheltering himself from whatever he saw in his dreams. All four agree that it's time to get out of the forest as soon as possible. It doesn't help that the sunlight uncovers Nordic runes that were carved into the trees around the shack. They don't want to talk about their dreams, fearing that putting them in words would let them escape from the confines of their mind. They ate half their food that night, expecting only one more full day of hiking, so they need to get out of the forest today. However, they are pretty much lost and relying on an overgrown trail that's not on a map. Luke says that it would be better to trace their footsteps back to the place where they came from. But Dom and Phil don't want to add another day to the hiking trip, even more so a day on an empty stomach. So it's up to Hutch to decide, and in the end, they will try to make it through the forest. Once again, Luke's idea is dismissed. So they go. The trail twists and turns, leading them in the wrong direction. Luke isn't angry just with Dom and Phil anymore. He's also angry with Hutch, because he was the one that came up with the forest shortcut. On the way they see two more houses, but decide to not investigate. Dom's knee pain gradually slows them down to a halt, and Luke decides to scout ahead. Alone, he follows the trail further. At some point it goes through a dense dry patch of forest, and he's forced to crawl through a path carved by animals. At the other side, he finds something that takes his breath away. A graveyard and a church. He sprints back to inform the others, but finds them crawling at a snail's pace, laughing about something. It's almost as if they aren't stuck in a forest with a single day of food left. It's almost as if all the strange occurrences didn't happen to them. Of course it makes Luke angry, especially when Dom starts questioning why he dumped his gear ahead. "Are you even taking this seriously?" he asked, and immediately wished he hadn't when he saw Dom and Hutch's surprised faces. "Course we are, you silly arse," Dom barked. "Think that I'm enjoying this?" Hutch said, "Dom," quietly. But there was something in that rebuke, something about Dom's flat, stolid, scowling face, and something in Hutch's supporting grin. Luke has had enough. He is no longer willing to endure this constant humiliation. And why should he? Why should he take this from a short, fat weakling? He pushes Dom and Dom punches him in return. This is exactly what Luke wanted, and he proceeds to paint his face red. Hutch and Phil just watch, not sure how to react. At the end, Dom is laying on the ground, crying. Not because of fear or pain, but because of anger and humiliation. But after they are separated, Dom has another salvo of insults for Luke. About how he's insane, can't hold a job, is always single, and about how all of them are wasting their time with him. Luke turns around and goes for another round, this time breaking his nose and cracking a tooth. Hutch takes Luke aside and tries to talk some sense to him. "Didn't know you had it in you, Chief. God knows I thought of giving Dom a shoeing over the years, but people like us just don't do things this way. What were you thinking?" Luke looked at Hutch and saw the disappointment in his friend's eyes. The permanent estrangement. You could never come back from an event like this. Nothing would ever be the same again. He knew his friendship was over with all three of them. Luke is fine with letting things go with Dom and Phil, but Hutch, well, that hurts. Regret sets in, but it's too late. For now, all of them are in this together, so it's time to continue in the direction of the graveyard. When they arrive, Hutch is fascinated. The wooden church has to be extremely old. The carvings in the wall suggest that it's not Christian, it's pagan. The rotten floor of the church breaks underneath Hutch. It's revealed that bones of both animals and men are hidden under the floor. They don't make much of it, and assume it's a crypt. Whatever the purpose of the place is, it would be one of the most impressive archaeological finds in Europe. As they are talking about becoming famous, they get interrupted by... well, I'll just read it to you. They looked at each other and were both beginning to crack mad grins when Phil started shouting outside. So at least for me, that sentence kind of took away a lot of the tension, but yes, Phil did indeed scream outside. Now he's standing there, his pants down, staring at the trees. When he was taking a piss, something in the forest didn't look right. So he focused his gaze onto whatever it was, and then It moved. Even worse, Hutch finds more bones, but these ones are a lot less old and smashed to pieces. Some of them are the remains of children. I have to clarify, from the beginning of the book up until now, it's still raining. They try to make it to the edge of the forest, but by the evening, they're still deep in the woods. There is no other choice than to set up their tents and take a rest considering the state in which Dom and Phil happen to be in. They make dinner, yet still feel unsatisfied after consuming some of their last food. Now they are down to 4 energy bars each and a communal chocolate bar. The situation is grim. It's not helped by the fact that their friend group has effectively fallen apart. Luke wants to apologize to Dom, but at the same time feels frustrated that none of them are ever capable of showing any empathy towards him. He'd begin to catch people exchanging glances whenever he spoke up in group situations. Or they would be half smiling when he entered the offices and warehouses he worked in. But he never stayed for very long because he moved on to something else equally unsatisfactory. Invitations to join others lessened, then ceased before he was 32. Only damaged and insecure women seemed to find comfort in his company, though they had little interest in him besides his being a confirming presence. By 34 he was lonely, genuinely. An attempt at an apology is answered by Dom with an insult, and Luke is angry again. Luke is sick of analyzing his own feelings, especially when they boil down to the cycle of self-pity, anger, and regret. But this time, he won't have it. He wants to talk it out, because tomorrow they'll get out of the forest and never see each other again, or at least that's what he thinks. "Ah, here we go again," Dom said. Luke took a deep breath, paused, looked at the end of his cigarette. "You've been on my case since London. You think I'm happy being the butt of all your jokes, mate? Oh, poor you, boo fucking who. You're doing it again, belittling me. Why? Can it, Luke?" Hutch said, his voice sounding tired. Why? Why is it whenever I speak it's too tedious for you all to listen? What do I say that is so inappropriate or stupid? Maybe it is, Dom said. Luke ignored the comment, knowing it was an attempt to get back at him for the humiliation Dom felt about the fight. I can't believe any of us used to be friends. Dom kept it up. We're not anymore, so don't strain yourself. After a couple more pages of dialogue, they get to the core issue. Dom says, "Do you think your philosophy impresses anyone with any responsibility in their lives? You said back in Stockholm that you have made other choices. What choices? What have you done with your life? Really? What have you got to show for yourself?" Luke leaned forward, his voice raised until he became too conscious of it and lowered it. "It's not a competition. I don't want what you have. I genuinely don't. But this is a lie. Luke is envious of what they have. A family, a career, he wants those things too. But he made his choices and can't turn back time. He loathed himself for desiring acceptance, when he also knew how thwarted every job and relationship made him feel. After Phil and Dom fall asleep, Luke has a conversation with Hutch. And well, turns out it's not sunshine and roses on the other side either. Both are having relationship issues and are separated from their wives. Both are in debt. Phil's business went bankrupt, and the wealth was the only thing his wife liked about him. Dom's wife has a mental illness that takes her out of the picture, and he now has to take care of his autistic kids. Plus there is debt, a lot of it. Luke suddenly feels bad again, but how could he know that they were going through such tough times? The plan is to go to sleep. Then, the next morning, Luke wakes up early and sets off on his own to try and get out of the forest and call a rescue. And there it is again, the sound of branches being splintered somewhere in the darkness, outside of their tents. Hutch brushes it off, it's just falling wood. But then, something between a jackal's bark and cow-like coughing echoes through the forest. Hutch, an experienced outdoorsman, takes it lightly. He needs to remain sane, so he assures Luke that it might be a badger or something. Big mistake. Luke wakes up from another nightmare, realizing the screaming is real and not his. It takes him a while to get out of his sleeping bag, but as soon as he does, he sees that the tent Dom and Hutch shared is torn apart. Dom is sitting in the middle of the mayhem, covered in blood. There is no Hutch. Dom doesn't know what happened except that Hutch was taken away. And by the amount of blood, they don't have a lot of time before it's gonna be too late for him. They wander around in the woods aimlessly for 2 hours, but can't find him. Both Dom and Phil are paralyzed with fear and unable of thinking clearly. It's up to Luke to pick up the mantle of leadership. He can't leave them on their own and go ahead as he planned. They scrap together the most important gear, and even though Dom objects, Phil agrees with Luke. They have to go south before that thing comes back for them. And on their way they find Hutch, displayed in the trees as if the killer knew they would pass through there. His body was opened under the ribcage, revealing his organs to the world. His arms are arranged in a crucified position. And there it is, the jackal barking in between the trees. Unlike Dom and Phil, Luke's response is to fight. He takes out a knife and rushes to follow the sound, but can't find the source. He returns to his friends and starts interrogating them. But Dom can't entertain the thought of something sinister lurking in the forest. He latches onto the hope that it's a bear or maybe a human. Luke tells them about his dreams and about the bodies at the church. Phil finally realizes that not talking about it won't make it go away. Phil swallowed, took a breath. They sacrificed people, I think, in that house to something a long time ago. Luke nodded. When that church was open for business and that cemetery wasn't so overgrown, the people in that basement were, in a really bad way, murdered. Phil raised his face to look at a portion of a sky visible through the canopy. They hung them, strung them up for it. I think it was younger then, but it's still here. They're gone, the old people I saw in my dream, who fed it. But it is still here. They pick up a better pace this time. Luke is carrying most of the luggage and takes responsibility for his two cripples. Unlike in the movie, the forest in the book doesn't have some sort of a magical barrier that prevents them from leaving. The place is just way too large. They lost their way, and since it's a virgin forest, traversal is extremely difficult. After a long and painful day, it becomes clear that another night out is unavoidable. With their last strength, they get onto a hill and set up a campsite. Dom's knee is forcing him to crawl at this point. Phil sets out to make a fire, while Luke climbs on top of a tree to get a view of the surroundings. The edge of the forest is in sight. A mere 6 or 7 kilometers away, they have hope. But as he's up there and Dom is resting in the tent, the thing takes Phil. It's not dramatic. They hear a scream and then nothing. Just like that, our cast is reduced to two characters, trying to cope with the insane situation they're in. Leaning against each other's back, this might be their last chance to talk things out. Faced with the prospect of something distinctly inhuman lurking around them, it's not hard to accept each other's humanity. Both apologize to each other. Both weren't happy with their lives and were jealous of one another. Dom, tied down by his family and career, wanted to experience some of the freedom Luke enjoyed. Luke, not having any direction in life, would love to have someone to live for. But in reality, both are jealous of an imaginary life the other person built on lies. This is how a lot of friendships between men work. You want to impress the others while not being impressed yourself. The sound starts again. Luke goes to investigate, and in that moment, he detects movement behind him. He turns around, and just in time for the trees to close behind Dom. His friend is sitting there not aware of what happened. This is how the creature hunts. It uses sound to distract them and separate them. Since it moves so quickly and so quietly, it almost snatched Dom while Luke was looking away. Dom tells Luke that if they survive until the morning, he needs to go ahead. Dom already knows that he can't possibly make it out alive. But Luke is not leaving him behind. As the night comes, they are supposed to change guards. Since Dom is unable to keep awake, it's not really possible. Instead, it's only Luke that sits there and stares into the forest. At the edge of his peripheral vision, there is a large shadow that just looks odd. It's the type of thing you'd notice only if you are being actively hunted. He wakes up Dom and shines his light in between the trees. The creature retreats into the forest and starts circling the hilltop. The foliage is shaking all around them, but due to the darkness, they can't tell where it is. At some point it stops and Luke throws a stone, hitting the creature. It shrieks, and in a second, something emerges from the woods and cracks his skull. Luke wakes up with a piece of cloth tied around his head. Good news is that he probably did some damage with the rock. The creature didn't come back. Bad news is that he probably has a skull fracture. The two cripples stumble down the hill and leave most of their gear behind. They either make it out today or remain in the forest forever. When they pass Phil's corpse, displayed in the same way as Hutch before, they refuse to look up, and instead keep going. Both badly injured, without water and food. They sink to all fours and crawl from then on. It's getting dark again, and Luke doesn't have the energy to look behind at Dom anymore. He feels Dom's presence following him, and he smells his terrible stench. It takes him a while to realize that no man can smell so putrid. This is the smell of a carnivore. When he finally looks behind him, there is no more Dom. Of course it hurts Luke, but at this point, what else can he do but keep going? He crawls, now hallucinating from the lack of water, food and energy. He slips from reality to dream and back. He sees tiny white little figures dancing around him. He can no longer move, leans against a tree and accepts his death. When he opens his eye, he can see the red dusk piercing through the trees. The edge of the forest is in sight, but it matters little. In between those trees, he can see a dark figure, almost indistinguishable from the rest of the woods. He can only see it because the red sun falling behind the horizon is illuminating its presence. His vision can't make out any features apart from it being tall, at least 3 times as tall as a man. But it matters not. This is his final resting place. He goes to sleep. This is the end of the first part, but it's not the end of the book. As someone who watched the movie first, nothing could prepare me for how different the following arc is. The story about friendship is over. The story about hate begins. Luke wakes up strapped to a bed in a run-down wooden house. No longer being able to tell reality from dream, he notices old people entering and leaving his room. They speak Swedish or maybe Norwegian. Then the old people are gone and you are alone in the cold metal basin. But something is coming down from the room upstairs. You can hear its bone feet on the wooden steps of a staircase outside the room. And you can hear the sound of something squeezing its body down and through a narrow passage, accompanied by quick guts of excited breath. A thick shape fills the doorway of your room. You scream when you realize it is coming through on all fours, with the long horns out front. Luke wakes up from what I can only describe as one of the few successful jump scares in literature. Music is playing, screams, bass and drums coming out of an old speaker. Next to the bed are 3 upright figures, a goat, a hare and a lamb. The goat removes his mask and reveals a human face, albeit painted white and black. Luke asks where he is and the man replies, south of heaven. Who are they? The Wild Hunt. The final gathering. The lamb mask was hiding a feminine-looking boy, and the hare mask was concealing a fat girl. They are in their late teens and all covered in face paint. Luke begs them to call an ambulance and the police, but they tell him in a heavy Norwegian accent that there is no such thing here. He's lucky to be alive. Very lucky. They walk out of the room and lock the door. The next time he wakes up, an old lady enters accompanied by the tall feminine guy from before. The woman gives him food but can't speak English. The boy doesn't seem to be worried with Luke's condition at all. Instead, he introduces himself as Fenris. His other friend is Loki, and the girl is Surtr. He asks Luke where he's from and after learning he's from London, why did he come here? Luke says that it was supposed to be a holiday, which makes Fenris laugh. He doesn't seem to be interested in hearing about the deaths or Luke's injuries. Instead, he directs the conversation towards music. Luke isn't into black metal, but works at a CD shop so he knows some bands. The youth promises to educate him, especially in relation to Blood Frenzy, which is his band. Luke calls him Fenris from Sweden, which offends him. Norway, I am a Norwegian, Viking, he says. After some more chat, they leave and once again lock the room. Luke is getting angry and annoyed by his hosts. There is a small window through which he can see the 3 youths making fires outside, listening to black metal, dancing and drinking. Only the old woman who fed him seems to be from there, and it goes beyond him why she tolerates their presence. Fenris comes back to show him some black metal photos he doesn't care about. Luke thinks to himself, and why they produce such music in the social utopia of Scandinavia puzzled him. Perhaps it was a protest to being the most spoiled people in Europe, an act of rebellion against having everything. When it's revealed that Luke doesn't know about Bloody Frenzy, their band, he gets slapped in the face. But Luke won't take it anymore. He tells him he is not interested in his devil-worshipping bullshit. Fenris goes to explain his view on the matter. He clenched both his hands into fists, closed his eyes, gritted his teeth into a snarl. See how Christians poison us. We can only call things by their names. It is Odin, Great Wotan, who mutters in our blood. What Christians say is evil is our religion. We are warriors. Wild, you know. We are open to nature. We feel no pity. Sure, okay. Luke did not know what else to say. Fenris goes to explain his religion and philosophy in more detail. Fenris's blood is speaking to him. The blood told him to burn a church. He burned a church. It told him to kill an immigrant. He killed an immigrant. He is a Viking, and the devil no longer interests him. That's a Christian concept. The old gods are calling him, he explains. Same as they called the Germans in the 30s. It's nothing new. It's the very mundane and unimpressive mixture of paganism and Nazism. They came to honor the creature in the forest, which they call a god. Luke knows that whatever they want to do with him, it won't be good. He attempts to knock out Fenris with a mug. He almost succeeds, but unfortunately, the girl comes just in time to intervene. Surtr barges into the room and immobilizes him. She wants to kill him, but the third one, Loki, stops her. In the night, Luke hears voices coming from the attic. Every time he moves, light footsteps above him follow. He tries talking to whoever is up there, but to no avail. Luke dreams about the small white figures that he dreamt about back when he was crawling out of the forest. They are dancing outside the house, around a stone chamber. The chamber is filled with bones. That's where they'll put him. And then the creature will come out of the forest. Luke is woken up by Loki. He tells him that his friend, Dom, had come for a visit. They take Luke outside and laugh as he realizes what happened. Dom is impaled up in the tree crowns facing the meadow. Fenris is ecstatic. He thinks that their music summoned the god, and this is a gift. Loki talks about how this is the most remote place in Scandinavia, a place where Odin still rules. Luke decides to try and make a run for it, but he doesn't have a chance with arms tied at his wrist. Surtr catches him and puts her knees on his arms. I would appreciate it if the author didn't describe the smell between her legs in as much detail as he did. I decided against reading the passage to you out loud because I like my audience. They don't kill Luke, they just lock him away again. At this point it's apparent to him that he is about to get sacrificed. When Loki comes to visit again, they have the same conversation Luke had with Fenris. He points to all the pentagrams and upside-down crosses tattooed on Loki's body. It implies that when he was in his church-burning phase, he used to worship the devil. Some of those churches are hundreds of years old. He was burning a part of his culture, a part of his nation's history. But now he covers his body with pagan tattoos and suddenly claims to care about his blood and people. Loki doesn't get angry. He is calm and replies, "You know, Luke, I miss fighting the church, the Christians. At least real Christians have the balls to judge me. You are with us or you are damned. We learned that from them. It is true. To be absolutist, fascistic, I like their steel." He goes on about how this forest is untouched by immigrants, gays and social democrats. They have woken up something ancient and will be there when the old gods return. It's about blood and soil. They killed 9 people and enjoy precisely that it happened in a safe country like Norway, where nobody would expect it. He has a long monologue about how devil worship was a good start, but to really defeat Judaism, Christianity and Islam, they need to go deeper, back in time. Bring on the Ragnarok. Luke is not impressed. Loki even admits that he doesn't really know what is hiding in the forest. Yet he seems to have this picture painted by his ideology. There is, however, some useful insight. The old woman is one of the last original settlers, and the thing they worship goes by many names in that part of Scandinavia. The Christians call it the Black Yule Goat. Not a proper name for a god, but that's what it is, a god. At least, according to Loki. Luke doesn't give in and he tells him that it's not a god. A god wouldn't have his place of worship fall into ruin. Whatever it is, it's on the verge of extinction. Civilization will come for the forest and the old woman will die, its last worshipper. It's over. All the blood will be spilled for nothing. The next day he is taken to the attic. Surtr doesn't follow the boys because she's scared of what's up there. Even Loki and Fenris seem to be frightened. The entire room is lined with chairs, and on those chairs, in their eternal rest, sit the Ancient Ones. Luke thinks about how the terrible things in the first house and the church were already fucked up enough. And even then, it's not enough for these people. They just have to decorate everything with corpses. But then he notices the gentle sound, the breaths, the clicking of jaws. They might look like corpses, but they are alive. And what sort of alive that is. Unable to move, deprived of most senses, but still here to serve the thing in the forest. The old woman is there as well. She takes out a knife and one of the figures speaks with what is left of its mouth. They demand a sacrifice, but the youths won't have it. They take Luke away and lock him back in his room. He can hear the argument through the walls. The woman is angry and then starts crying. In a strange way, he feels bad for her. The three youths start their usual dancing, drinking and screaming to black metal music outside. They constructed an upside-down cross, surely intended for Luke. He describes it like this. And so it all continued. It was dull in its predictability. Evil was, he decided, inevitable, relentless, and predictable. Imaginative, he'd give it that much, but soulless. The old woman comes to prepare him for the sacrifice. Not the one she wanted to do, but the one Loki had in mind. To awaken the old god. He finds comfort in her presence. She washes him, gives him a crown of flowers, and he cries into her shoulder. The bones of men and beasts, the skeletons of forsaken homes, the forgotten places of worship, now bound them each to the other. He had come here living and warm, but now must become of it. There was no other place for him in the world, not anymore. He thinks about the creature he is about to be sacrificed to, and its last true worshipper. And I think this is a beautiful part of the book. It might be my favorite. He knows that if the youth see that creature as God, then it's not a god with that sort of weight. It's not almighty, and it's not about to deliver a Ragnarok. And in his awe and steadily growing comprehension at what existed out here, at this miraculous and dreadful thing, he suspected it was not long for this world either. What was extraordinary was how it had survived for so long. But its rule was over. It was endangered, an isolated god, all but forgotten and long demented. Branded a false god by the sign of the cross, its adultery rotted in forgotten attics now. And about it false prophets and rag messiahs gathered. Luke is taken outside and tied to the cross. Then it's flipped upside down and made to face the forest. There is not much resistance from Luke, he accepted his fate. He thinks about how much he hates the three teenagers, everything they stand for. As the blood rushes into his head, he loses consciousness. He once again dreams about those white figures. They want him to understand. Understand why his friends are dead and why all of this needs to happen. Suddenly he finds himself in some sort of a barn. A woman is giving birth. Amidst the cacophony of her screams and the sounds of livestock, a circle of figures forms around the woman. The mother dies before the child is born, and out of her lifeless body they pull out a baby. But its legs aren't human. Luke wakes up, but not entirely. He is surrounded by the Ancient Ones, the things in the attic. The old woman cuts into him, opening something deep inside, something primal buried in his body. And out of that hole comes out the animal part of him that just wants to survive. When he wakes up for real, he notices it's day. The ritual didn't work, the creature didn't answer the call. He is untied, his room is unlocked, and there is a knife on his bed. The old woman wants him to kill the false messiahs of her god, but he will kill neither for her nor for the thing in the forest. He is aware that his entire life led up to this situation. This is his final reckoning. No more being the victim, no more mercy. In this part of the world, the old rules still apply. You are the hunter, or you are the prey. He gets out of his cell and enters the kitchen where Fenris is sleeping. There is a bolt-action rifle in the corner, but for whatever reason, it doesn't shoot. Fenris wakes up and charges at Luke with a knife. But he only cuts into his thigh, and Luke is able to inflict a lot more damage with a stab to his neck. Bleeding out, Fenris crawls out of the room and Luke finally manages to turn off the safety on the rifle. Loki rushes down the stairs just in time to get shot. Fenris managed to crawl a couple meters away from the house, but it's no use. Luke kills him and then goes for Surtur. All of this while the old woman is sitting in the kitchen, observing the entire thing. He manages to outflank Surtur, who was trying to ambush him but doesn't kill her. She runs off into the woods. There is a pickup truck offering him a chance for escape. But just as he gets the keys, he hears singing. The old woman is now standing outside, facing the forest, and chanting. He can make out a single word, a word similar in most Germanic languages. She is calling for her mother. A primal fear tells him exactly what he's supposed to do. He shoots the woman, and for the first time, he sees what is underneath her long dress. A pair of legs, bent in the wrong way at the knee joints, with hooves instead of feet. Luke has a breakdown, struggling to accept what he's about to do next. Then he gets up and makes his way to the attic, determined to end the rule of the Black Goat. One by one, he slits the throats of the ancient things that once used to be human. All this time they were coming into his dreams as those white figures. Now they can dream no more. In response, he hears that loud, devilish, jackal-like sound coming out of the woods. The cry of an isolated god who just lost his last worshippers. He rushes down to the truck, the forest around him shaking in rage. A large black presence is felt all around the house. He jumps into the car but has so much trouble starting it up. He lives in London and hasn't driven in years. Finally, the truck starts up and he makes it into the forest. He tries to control the vehicle to the best of his ability, but the road is terrible and he gets stuck. When the engine finally starts up again and the wheels start moving, he looks into the rearview mirror. A large black limb that seems to disappear as soon as he sees it. Surtur, the girl that ran to the forest, is dropped on the bed of the pickup truck, her ribcage torn apart. The car starts moving again. Slowly driving forward, he allows himself another look behind. There is a tall black figure with legs bending the wrong way at the knee joint. It starts pursuing him and catches up quickly. The car is stopped and he hears the creature getting on top of it. In his side window he catches a glimpse of the monster's eye. And then it's gone again. He revs up the engine and resumes his escape. It's not fast, he can't really go past second gear. And after a couple minutes, the road opens up and reveals the creature. A tall, lanky figure. Its eyes human, sentient. Its features goatish. Its teeth yellow and long, resembling something that should have been long extinct. Its head is decorated with a pair of mighty horns. It's charging at his car and he is charging at it. Through the windscreen it goes. A struggle ensues with the car shaking violently. In a desperate, last-ditch attempt, Luke reaches for the knife and repeatedly stabs the head that filled the cabin. Warm blood fills the car and then it's gone. The car is ruined, the steering wheel is no more. But so is the yipping and coughing, the sounds of a forgotten god no longer echoing through the woods. Luke limps out of the forest, victorious. Maybe he was the last person to encounter it. Maybe not. It matters little. The only thing on Luke's mind now is to get back to London. To get back to his situationship and dead-end job. Brown girls and CDs. That's his life, and he is sure that he will enjoy every moment of it. There are so many things I like about the ritual. Of course, I like the dynamic of the friend group in the first half, and that's what I see a lot of people online praise about the book. The movie can't afford to have these long inner monologues. Adam Nevill said that there aren't many books about run-of-the-mill millennial men, and that's what got him writing this. But you don't have to be a millennial to relate to some aspects of their friendship. If you haven't seen the movie, it follows the first half fairly accurately. And as with the book, that's the quote-unquote scary part of the movie, because the creature isn't revealed yet. Once you play your cards, horror often stops being scary. The filmmakers knew this, and that's why they end the movie pretty quickly. They came up with an amazing monster design. Of course it has antlers. If you've seen my antlerification video, this shouldn't be a surprise. Everything needs to have antlers. But that one gets a pass, because it's really cool. And while you don't finish the movie scared, you finish it feeling like it wasn't a waste of time. The reveal paid off because in the end, the creature was so interesting. The book takes a different approach. It puts you in the shoes of Luke, for whom the entity becomes effectively an all-powerful horror by the end of the first half. And then it de-escalates. The reader is introduced to new characters, a new place, and the creature is out of the picture for a pretty long time. You get new antagonists and slowly Luke's perspective changes. The thing in the woods is weak, dying, slowly being driven to a smaller and smaller patch of land. So the author prepares you for the inevitable. The final showdown can't ever live up to the hype. And after this de-escalation, after the ritual fails, comes the second scene in the attic, when Luke kills the Ancient Ones and the god in the woods starts screaming. It's just Luke and the heart of the forest boiling with rage. Obviously, you'd have to read it to experience it in that way, but there is something about that scene that makes it so beautiful. It's only horror that can make me feel this way. There is one more thing I really like. The free use from the second half. Listen, if you happen to be a neo-pagan, it's nothing personal. I bet there are many wonderful people within your community. But I personally really can't stand most attempts at reviving the old faith here in Europe. The reason is simple, I feel like most of it is not genuine. Whenever pagans say the word ancestor, I cringe. Your most important ancestors are your parents. And instead of looking at the religion of your parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, you look hundreds of generations back to someone who worshipped something you don't understand. For that reason, much of the music, clothing, and rituals associated with the neo-pagan movement are made up. And that's fine, a lot of those Nordic Viking bands acknowledge that it's just a fantasy. But then why, if you are all about your ancestors, you decide to worship in ways invented in the last couple of decades? And it's a shame because what is left of paganism in Europe is really cool. I don't want to share what country I'm from on this channel, just think of me as a random Slav. But I vividly remember the quote-unquote pagan rituals that survived in my region. Of course they were changed and in some instances made to fit monotheism, but they're still here, preserved through generations and generations. And the thought of some neo-pagan introducing throat singing and antlers into our tradition to make it more cool and primal, that would be pretty fucking lame. And the way in which the kids in the book try to awake the old gods with black metal and bonfires to no avail obviously, that clicked with me. This attempt at reviving something ancient without knowing what it entails, it's really done well in this book. And the way Luke gets annoyed with them, it resonates with me deeply. Obviously the youths in the book aren't just neo-pagan. They are the gayest, lamest archetype of person, the type that blends paganism with Nazism. These are people that utterly hate their region and people. They aren't actually religious, you can't believe in God because you think it's cool, that's not how faith works. Maybe these people are born into a Christian or Muslim family, but they take a look at their parents and, wouldn't you know it, they are just ordinary people. So they have to come up with this fantasy version of their ancient ancestors, which has nothing to do with reality. And here in the book they get their old god. But in a similar manner as their pre-Christian ancestors weren't some sort of Übermenschen, their ancient god is also remarkably undivine. Big for a human, small for a god. They are teenagers wanting to live in a fantasy land. They talk about blood and soil and about how the stronger prevail. Yet when it turns out that the stronger do indeed prevail, it's just not them, they beg for mercy. Okay, yapping's over, there should be more videos now because I got done with my semester. If you're new here, please subscribe. I make content about horror and Eastern Europe. Sometimes even both. But now that I think about it, I'm actually just gonna use this channel for whatever I want.